This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, good morning, everyone. We're continuing in Mishna Berura Daf Hashavua, Siman Lamed Beis, Sif Nun Aleph Nun Beis. Yitbar shloisha tfiras b'chol tzad. You should sew 3 stitchings on every side. Okay, let's see if we could pull this up. You should sew 3 stitchings on every side. Okay. Wow. Things are working today. Not bad. Not bad. See if we could pull this down here. Okay. Here. You see where the icon is? Yitbar shloisha tfiras b'chol tzad. 3 stitching. Maybe it didn't come out so clear. 3 stitchings on each side. V'chut hatfira. Okay. Weiter. V'chut hatfira yisoivev mishtei ruchos. And the string of sewing should encircle on 2 sides. I guess that means it should go on 2 sides, to go from the top through the bottom, so that it's apparent on the top and the bottom. Here he says, Shekol hatfira yehei misuveves mishnei tzadin panim ba'achar. By the way, there are different sheets. Very interesting. You're going to have a total of 12 stitchings, keneged the yud beis shiftei kaf. But I believe there are shitas that you could have a minimum of 10, because maybe we're not going to count Levi, and maybe we're not going to count a different shevet, maybe we're not going to count Yosef, or you could have as many as 14 if we count Menashe and Ephraim. Okay. The stitching should pass through each and every bias. Let's see if we can get a picture of that. Here. So it should pass through each and every bias. I guess it means you have 3 stitchings. So 1 second. You're going to have 3 stitchings like here. You have 1, 2, 3. But I'm not sure how that's passing through every bias if there are 4 batim. Right? In other words, if you have 3 stitchings, 1, 2, 3, but there are 4 batim, so how is the stitching passing before? This would only make 3 compartments, right? 3 stitchings, 1, 2, 3, only makes 3 compartments, but you want them to pass through the bias. Let's say over here. We'll see in the Mishna Berura how he explains it. He only made 10 stitchings. Or less, it's not possible. The Machaber continues, some say these 12 stitchings, should be with 1 strand. Says the Mishna Berura, Reish Chaf Ches, the Chol Tzad. The reason for the 12 stitchings, neged yud beis shiftei Yisrael. You don't need the tefira in the bias. Rak samach lahabayis. It doesn't have to be in the bias, but near the bias. I'm not sure what he means by that. I guess it doesn't have to be on the inside. It could be near it. How near? The Mishna explains, Rak Samachbayis. The Ein Toifrim K'Toifrim Begadim Mispas HaBeged B'li Shiur. Let's see in diagram 2. You don't sew it like you sew Begadim without leaving anything over. Ela Mishayer Minatitura Chutz Lahatfira. you leave meaning like this. You don't stitch like you stitch begadim, where the stitching goes on the edge of the beged, but rather near the edge. So there should be some titura after the stitching. Fine. V'tzarch shir habatim melamata. You need shir habatim melamata lepiv. V'tzarch shir, V'tzarch she'ar habatim melamata lepiv yu yotzim mikol arba ruchasem. Let's see if in diagram 3 over here. There we go. You need that the hide of the batim milamata lepiv yu yotzim mikol arba ruchasem ad shiu magiyim tachas nikvei hatvira kedei sheyitvar or habatim mikol tzad imat tetura. You need that the height of the batim from below from underneath its mouth should come out from the four sides until it reaches under the holes of the stitching, so that you could sew the height of the batim on each side with the titura. So apparently what you're going to want to do is, you're going to want, okay, I got it. This is the bias. You see where the shin is? The shin is the bias. Around the lower extremity of the bias, you want there to be a lip. Meaning, the R of the batim should be yoitzim, so that there's a sort of a lip around the end of the lower end of the bias, so that you could sew the titura to the bias, as opposed to where there's no lip and there's just a titura with a tiny, tiny lip, and there's just a titura on top of it. You want the whole of the lip of the bias to be commensurate with the whole of the titura. So that you could sew the hide of the bias with the titura. Not like the soifrim that shorten the hide of the batim. So that it doesn't pass further under the holes of the stitching. And it's not sewed at all with the titura. Rather, they're mahadik the bias in the square of the titura, meaning if you do it like this, if you don't make a lip, so then the bias is fitting in the titura just because it's a box that fits into the hole of the titura, as opposed to making a lip where you're actually sewing the titura onto the bias. Baruch She'amar disqualified many tefillin because of this. You need to sew together the height of the batim with the titura. Okay. Now, the Mechaber says the chut of the tefira needs to surround the two sides. So let's see what this means. Ratzalaim. Shekol hatefira, all the stitching, Yehei Misoveves, should encircle Mishnei Tzadim, from both sides, Panim va'achar, face and back. Meaning, like in picture number 1, you want the stitching to go Panim from the top, and this is the Panim, and the bottom is the achar. Nimtza toifer the base machden. You're using two needles. You're using two needles. One needle is used to go up, and one is the base machden. One is going to the stat upper, which is down. And one is entering the upward side. I'll show you a picture of that. Here it's not so clear, but you have one needle where you're going upward, and one needle that you go downward. So let's see. See, this needle is used to go upward to stitch it up, and this needle is used to stitch it down. Okay. Stif katan reish lamed. Miu im loyasta rak yud tfiras. B'chein im loyhever chudat tfira. Or if you didn't pass it through inam akam b'diavad, b'ayin el b'stif katan reish yud zayin. Okay. Stif katan reish lamed aleph. Some say that the 12 stitchings should be with one thread. Says Mishna Berura, but the nifsak, if it's snapped, let's say it's snapped. Let's see the picture. Let's go down here. These pictures came out a little bit better. Here, let's say that it's snapped. Some say you could tie it. Some say you should take it out entirely. And you should sew it again with one thread. Since it snapped at the time of the tefira, nicker, it is recognizable that the chud is weak, and is destined to snap, and it's not worth anything. But if the chud is short, it's chilasai. So in other words, if the chud snapped, that shows it was a weak thread and it wasn't good enough to begin with. But when it was short to begin with, the inoy nifsak l'kulayama, and it would not, the inoy nifsak, and it didn't snap, then l'kulayama everyone would agree you could tie another thread to it, ligmar hatzvira, to complete the stitching. Because of our prima gadim. Prima gadim writes, if you don't have other sinews, you can rely on the first svara, namely that you could tie the likshar foot shenifsak and tie a foot that was snapped. Because that nifsak be'emtza hatzvira. This is all if it's snapped in the middle of the stitching. Aval nifsak achar hatzvira. But if it's snapped after the stitching, I'm the kaman stalama gimel sif base. Okay, let us see sif nun base. Here we go. You ready for sif nun base? Okay. Yachnis haratzua toich. You should stick the ritzua into the mavarta. Let's see. It's gonna work. You should stick the ritzua into the mavarta. V'yasta kasher, and you should make a kasher, min dalid b'shal roish, like a dalid. From the shal roish, the kasher should be like a dalid. Okay, like over here, it's like a dalid. U'chamin yud b'shal yad, and a yud of the shal yad, l'hashim usya shakai, im hashin shal b'shal roish, to complete the letters of shakai with the shin on the shal roish. So you have a shin on the shal roish, you have a dalid on the shal roish knot, and a yud on the shal yad knot. Haga, v'noyagim lahavir or al habayis shel yad l'roichav hazroya. The minog is, see what this is talking about. Number 6. No. Okay. Make this a little bigger. The minog is to stick through an R on the bias shel yad by the width of this roya. Its width should be like the roish of the bias, because let's see the reason for this. The Mishna Berura would say, you should only make the knots of the tefillin after you made the shin on the tefillin. Then make the dalet of the shalosh, like the order of the letters of a shin. Says Mishna Berura, Reish Lamed Beis, the kesher shall tefillin, the knot of the tefillin halacha Moshe Sinai is halacha Moshe Sinai. Benira, it would seem shetach la'asoy the lishma. You have to make it lishma. V'lo yasta ukata. You should not make it small. You have to make it lishma, and it should not be small. Kimin dalet. Now this is a major subject. What shape should the knot be? Raise your hand if you have used a dalet. If your knot of the shorosh is a dalet. Well, some say it should be a mem. The big question, whether your knot should be a dalet or a mem. Let's see the Mishna Berura. There are those who make a kesher like a mem. Kemen stuma and endemen. Shenir kishnei dalosin mishnei tzadin. It's really like two daleds on two sides. Ragloi shalzeh b'tzad roishoy shalzeh. Like in this picture, it looks like a double dalet basically. Dalet. V'ayin b'seif t'varas ari shevi b'shem shum mehava v'eskim aladina de'ilo isim kesher shaldav m'kuvan yoyse aladina. This Tiferes Aryeh brings the name of Tshuva Me'ava, that to make a Dalit is more correct. Gam lo yasta, that is more correct. Interesting. Gam lo yasta kesher ha'asli l'shamid anavana. You should also not make a knot that could slip this way and that way. Mais v'efet shara achar chalitza satzilan shehutar ha'kesher shal yad. There's someone who saw that after he took off his tefillin, his knot was undone. I told him to go back and put on the tefillin again and read Shema without a bracha. You could still be mekanim mitzvah tefillin, and you were not the first time. The time of his reasoning was the Shitas Rashi, the Tefillin, the Hayod, who halacha Moshe Sinai, lo yatsa adayin yedei ha-mitzvah, according to Rashi, that the Yud is halacha Moshe Sinai, you are not yod say the mitzvah. Reish Lamed Dalet. The minhag is to be ma'avir hide on the bayis shel yad by the width of the arm, and its width should be like the width of the bayis. Hatam l'fichatron shel yad mislimin oisam tachas abagadim. The reason is because the ton shel yad, you put it under your garments. Umisnadidin, they shake. V'nefsadim, they get ruined. V'skalpin, l'katnogu l'havir l'suazu aleim l'chazkam. So basically they attach on top of the shel yad and then an extra piece to maintain the sharpness and the square of the ton shel yad. In our communities, we're not knowing with this extra piece of hide on top of the shel yad. You should only make the dalet after you make the shin. This is the proper course of action. If it happened that the kesher shorosh got undone, so do we say, okay, so undo the yud of the shel yad, do the dalet of the shorosh, and then go back to do the yud of the shel yad so that it should be in order? Ein tzarich rak l'saknoi. You only have to fix it, v'lo lahater hashel yad, and not to undo the tefillin shel yad. Okay, Rabbi Glatstein, thank you very much for joining us today. Tomorrow, we're going to try for double header. It will be shorter tomorrow. By the way, this concludes Sif Lamed Beis, which is a major siman in Arachayim. So, Baruch Hashem, we had some Siyata D'Shmaya to get some level of understanding of this. And Baruch Hashem, next cycle, even better. So we'll see you tomorrow if you're available at 11 a.m. And then next week, we'll be back on track on Monday. Okay? Thank you. Good night. Good night, everyone. Good night.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.